What's up, everyone? Welcome to Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bron Bafflestone. So today we're having another episode of my deep dive series. Today looking at the spell Pyrotechnics, one of my favorite spells that I consider a go-to, and I try and put it on almost every build that has it available. It's a spell that I alluded to about a month ago in my tactics video on Heavy Obscurement, so definitely check that video out as well as my deep dive on Heavy Obscurement because it is one of the most confusing mechanics in the game. So worth watching. I will put the links to those videos in the description below. But yeah, let's go into Pyrotechnics. First, a reminder, if you like the music, the link to the album will be in the video description below. Thanks so much to the boys in my Patreon. Thanks so much to the viewers, and feel free to like and subscribe if you want to help a brother out. Without further ado, let's check out Pyrotechnics. So Pyrotechnics is a second level spell, and I've put the description on the screen so you can read it. It's available to artificers, bards, sorcerers, and wizards, but it's also on the Clockwork Sorcerer replacement list for Aid and Lesser Restoration, and it's available to the 1/3 caster list with one of their Any School picks. As we can see, the spell creates either fireworks or a smoke cloud. The fireworks is a 10-foot AoE con save or suck that inflicts blindness for 1 turn. We will never use this part of the spell. It sucks. The smoke cloud aspect of it, however, creates heavy obscurement over a 20-foot radius that folds around corners. This is what we're getting the spell for, because in general, heavy obscurement is a very strong situational defense in 5th edition. It can essentially shut down a great majority of save or suck abilities. See my deep dive and tactics videos on heavy obscurement for more details about how all of that works. But we're here today to talk about Pyrotechnics, which is arguably the strongest iteration of heavy obscurement in 5th edition. It doesn't require concentration. The fact that it doesn't require concentration makes it significantly better than the concentration heavy obscurement options like Fog Cloud or Darkness. In fact, it's one of only 3 means of creating no concentration smoke or fog in 5th edition. The other 2 are the Ever-Smoking Bottle and the Ring of Obscurement, but those are items, and a player is not in control of what items they get, the DM is. So Pyrotechnics is the only available option that is in full control of the player. Plus, it also lacks the unwieldy AoE of the Ever-Smoking Bottle. That thing has a 60-foot radius, and having played with one, it's often difficult to deploy it in a way that isn't debilitating for the party. And Pyrotechnics, unlike the Ring of Obscurement, does not consume an attunement slot, which of course is hugely valuable in 5th edition. Now, Pyrotechnics creates smoke, and smoke or fog is the best type of heavy obscurement because it defeats True Sight and Devil's Sight. I put the description of True Sight on the screen, and we can see that it defeats a lot of things, but it does not defeat atmospheric barriers. That means this spell scales incredibly well into higher tiers, and stays relevant in Tier 3+ because True Sight becomes a lot more common in those tiers. As it's only a 2nd level spell, there is minimal resource investment, there's not much competition for impact in mid-Tier 2+, and interestingly, it can't be affected by Dispel Magic, because the spell has an instantaneous duration that creates non-magical smoke. So Pyrotechnics combos really nicely with the Alert feat, so that you get attacked at disadvantage, and it combos amazingly with Blind Sight. And remember, party marshals do often have access to the blind fighting style, and while it's difficult to get via items, it is possible. You can get a Dagger of Blind Sight or one of the Dragon Masks, but it also combos amazingly with concentration spells that leverage Blind Sight. Because Pyrotechnics is not concentration, you can make those combos. And there are a lot of summons that have Blind Sight. For example, the Bat, the Crab, Tiny Servants, Animated Objects, Summon Draconic Spirit, Summon Greater Demon, the Barlgura and the Chasmi, or the Giant Constrictor Snake of the Staff of the Python. So those are great to combo with Pyrotechnics. And while there's only one spell that grants Blind Sight, it's Draconic Transformation, which is a pretty good spell and a nice combo with Pyrotechnics. Now, note that the spell does have a logistical imposition in that it requires an open flame to target. So if you plan to use this spell, be prepared. Carry a lantern or a torch whenever initiative might be rolled. It might be something of a hassle, but it can save your life, so to me it's worth it. If you don't want to mess with it, keep in mind that you can also offload ignition of the flame to a summon. So something that doesn't have a huge value to its actions, like a familiar, tiny servant, homunculus, those are all things that can ignite the flame before you turn it into smoke with pyrotechnics. Now note that the smoke is vulnerable to specialized countermeasures. For example, gust of wind or control winds will blow it away, but fortunately these are pretty rare and you're not going to run into them too often. Finally, we have to keep in mind that deployment of pyrotechnics does bring the risk of creating suboptimal conditions for the team. It will shut down all advantage-based abilities, which the team very likely has, things like Reckless Attack, or Sneak Attack, or Guiding Bolt, and it will shut down your own team's caster's Saver Sucks. So if you plan to use this, make sure you plan ahead and take some attack roll options, or the rare Saver Suck exceptions that don't require sight, like Bless or Slow. Now, the worst case scenario is that if you roll this out and the enemy has blind sight. Oh, that's bad, and that can really hurt the party. And it is hard to know what has blind sight in 5th edition without metagaming. But sometimes this stuff is common knowledge. Never hurts to ask the DM if the PC knows that, for example, dragons might have it, or the PC might have learned this already through experience. But that said, blind sight is pretty rare. I do like our chances in most cases, especially in higher levels where things tend to rely on true sight. Speaking of which, also gently remind your DM that it does defeat true sight. It's a pretty common error to think otherwise, so just check in to make sure that he's on board with how the rules work, or is knowingly making a call that things work otherwise. Now, while this isn't worst case scenario, it's still a little bit annoying if the enemy has abilities that are unimpeded by blindness, as that can hamper the party and doesn't do much to get in the way of what the enemies are doing, since a lot of them just don't have sight-based abilities. And if it turns out that the pyrotechnics is not helping or even hurting the team, it's not that easy to get rid of. Remember that we can't just drop concentration on it or dispel it, as previously mentioned, so we have to manage it differently. One is in where you choose to set it up. It's only a 20-foot radius, so it doesn't take up the entire map. So consider setting up a heavy obscurement zone that can be abandoned if need be, like off to the side or in the back, and that way you or your team can run into it if you're getting smashed, or you can just ignore it and get out of its area of effect if it's hurting you. And it also might make sense to have some of the above-mentioned countermeasures ready if you need to get rid of it. Having a gust of wind available on a scroll or in like a bottled breath, or having control winds, which I think is a great spell. All of these are good options to get rid of your own pyrotechnics if you deploy it and it's hurting the team. So that's it. That's my breakdown of pyrotechnics. Like I said, one of my favorite spells and one of my go-tos in this game. But let me know what you think in the comments below. And regardless, thank you so much for watching. This has been Bill Bronze and Dragons. I'm your host, Bill Bafflestone. See you next time.